horror fans, my name is NomadBot and welcome to the Horror Light podcast, where we discuss horror in all shapes and forms, from scary stories to video games. Today's topic is all about scary stories. What makes a scary story? A scary story is defined as something that is said or written to make people feel frightened and think that a situation is much more unpleasant or dangerous than it really is. With much excitement, we're diving back into the world of horror stories from Reddit. Today's story comes to us from Reddit user GingerCat13. This is "A Duck is Watching Me. I'm beginning to realize why Anatidaephobia is real."
I think I have Anatidaephobia. I remember the laughs I had when I learned there was a fear of a duck always watching you. I practically laughed so hard that my face became red. My friend, Emily, made a remark about how it's not funny, because people actually suffer from that fear. I just laughed harder and started making duck noises, which prompted her to double down laughing also. It was all fun and games. Keyword was. I used to love ducks. I had stuffed ducks in my room for decorations. I used to draw ducks all the time. They weren't my favorite animal, but I at least liked them. Not any more. I think it was in July when I first started noticing it. I didn't pay much attention at first. If I remember correctly, I was eating ice cream with some friends. It was Emily, her boyfriend James, and my boyfriend, Jackson. Jackson was amazing. He was polite, funny, sweet, and he was such a nerd. Exactly my type. He was easy on the eyes, too. He was amazing. Keyword was. Anyways, ice cream. I got strawberry in a cone, paid for by Jackson, of course. It was great. Then, I saw something in the corner of my eye. A white blob behind the trash can. I pointed it out to Jackson, and we investigated. It was a duck. I thought it was cute when I saw it. Jackson tried to coax it over, even throwing a piece of his ice cream cone at it. The duck didn't flinch at the action. It just stood there. I don't think it registered at the time, but now that I recall it, I think it was looking at me. The way I remember it, its eyes were unnatural. They were gray. I remarked to Jackson about it, but he didn't seem to hear me. That day went on as normal, and I don't think about the duck for a while. I think it was a week before it was brought to my memory. The time, it was just me and Emily. We were out shopping, and I saw it. The duck. It was just standing there, in a dark corner. Gray eyes, white feathers. Watching me. I pointed to it, and prodded Emily to look. "Emily, do you see that? It's that duck from last week." She turned her head, and so do I. But the duck was gone. My finger dropped, and I shook my head. It was there. I ran to the corner, peeking around it, but no duck present. It had just disappeared. I tried to shake the thought off for the rest of the day. For a little while, it worked. But not for long. The next time I saw it, I was alone. I was walking home from a late dinner at a fast food place. It was rainy, and the sky was gray, but something white stood out from all the grayness. It was standing there, watching me, with its haunting, gray eyes. This was when it started to get to me. So I tried to chase the duck off. I ran towards it at full speed. But it didn't move a muscle. I stopped short of running into it. It must seem dumb, a 5'1" girl terrified of a 20-inch duck. Comical. But I was quivering in fear at those gray eyes, staring up at me without fear. Unblinking. Intimidating me into submission. So naturally. I ran. I knew I had to get away from it, or else I'd keep being bothered by it. Hoping that distance would solve my problems, I ran. Before I turned the corner, I looked behind myself. The duck had vanished. I continued my trek home. As I got to my apartment building, I felt queasy from running. My head was dizzy, and I need more than anything to lie down. Then I noticed it in the bushes. Contrasting all the darkness was the glint of a gray eye. So I went into my apartment, hoping all would go back to normal. About a month later, I still hadn't seen the duck again. I went over to Jackson's house for some chill time, and he got me a gift. I hadn't mentioned the duck thing to him yet, because I thought he'd be weirded out by it. Not that I thought he wouldn't believe me, he would. He was the most supportive person on earth. I just didn't want him worrying. But then, I opened the gift. It was a stuffed duck. I hated to see the glee on his face as he watched me open it.
I know you love ducks, and after we saw that one earlier, I thought I'd get you one. You seem to love it so much.
He spoke, beaming. I loved him so much. I smiled, but I had a lump in my throat. I couldn't lie anymore. Well, it wasn't lying, it was just not telling him everything. Still, he had to know. So I told him everything. I remember how he held me as I began to cry, and how we burned the duck plushie he got. We went out for ice cream instead to get away, and all was well. Keyword was. Until it wasn't. The next part isn't hard to explain. One night soon after that, I had a dream about the duck. It was just staring at me. I woke up with a start, and decided to head over to Jackson's. I knocked, and he didn't answer, so I guessed he was asleep, so I let myself in. What I saw was the most terrifying thing I've ever heard of. Jackson was lying on the floor, dead. He had a gash ripped out of his neck, and a few other small ones in different areas. His eyes were gone. My boyfriend was gone. Beside him was it. The duck. The demon of my dreams. But that's not the worst part. The duck had flesh hanging from its bill. Human flesh. Jackson's flesh. Beside the duck was something familiar. Familiar, but blackened, and disfigured. The stuffed duck. Meanwhile, after observing all this, I saw the icing on the cake. The duck's eyes were directly staring at me, and it had a maddened look in those gray eyes. I screamed. But I didn't run. If I remember correctly, I shouted at the duck. I yelled loud enough to be heard, but no one came. I hate you, I shouted, I hate you. I shouted even louder. I threw my shoe at the duck, doing all I could to make it move. But the shoe deflected off the duck's face. It didn't move an inch. Until it nibbled on the skin in its mouth. My stomach churned. I wanted to vomit, but I couldn't stop looking at the duck. If I did, I knew it would disappear. So, I sat down, and cried. Right in front of the duck, right beside the torn apart body of my beloved. I decided to be bold. I reached for the stuffed duck. It was I had left, I needed it back. No matter what it symbolized. But then, a sharp pain shot through my hand. Blood splattered everywhere. The duck had lunged at my hand and ripped off some skin, then ate it, inches from my face. Then, it just stared at me. I still had the duck plush in my bleeding hand. I was wailing and screaming in the duck's face, but it didn't move. It stood. It watched. It stared. I couldn't take it any longer. So, I ran. I ran all the way home, locked the doors, and cried. I didn't know what else to do. I had no one else. My parents disowned me for moving away, my friends were out of town, and my boyfriend was eaten by a duck. I cried until I threw up in the bathroom. The pain I felt that night was immeasurable to any other. Who could I tell? Who would believe me? Only Jackson did, and he died for it. Small time skip. A month later, I had moved out of my apartment and into a rental house in a different state. I couldn't stay in the spot anymore. I had nothing to lose. Emily was getting married and had no time for me, so I just had to get away. I did keep up with the news on Jackson's death. Police, FBI, and the whole shebang couldn't figure out what had happened. But I knew. All was normal for that whole month. I was used to my new place, had made a friend or two, and was working on my health with a counselor. All was normal. Keyword was. That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in my bed, and finally grabbed my phone to try and occupy myself. But after a moment, I felt something. Fear. Fear that it was watching me. Then I looked up, almost like my eyes knew where to go. The window. It was staring at me through the window. I screamed the most blood-curdling scream almost ever. I slammed the curtains shut, barred the window and door with any furniture I could find, and sat on my floor rocking back and forth, clutching my knees. I knew I couldn't stay there forever. Feeling sick to my stomach, I peeked through the curtains. No duck. It's been 3 days since that night, and I'm isolating myself in my apartment indefinitely. I slept some last night, but I don't think I'll be doing that again soon. Edit, I found duck poop in my bathtub. I think I have Anatidaephobia.
That was A Duck Is Watching Me. I'm beginning to realize why Anatidaephobia is real. All credit goes to Reddit user GingerCat13. Be sure to go and give them the love they deserve and upvote the story if you enjoyed. Be sure to follow us on your favorite podcasting site. If you enjoyed it, be sure to also rate us 5 stars and share them with friends and family who love horror. Thank you all for listening. This has been the Horror Light Podcast and I will see you all soon. Bye bye.